Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite the ones they hate. And in today's episode, we've got nasty Karen customers, bosses writing people up, students against nasty principals, and one OP tells a story about a demotion that had huge consequences. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the stories. Also, if you're listening to this voice on the Dark Fluff channel, you're at the right place. If not, it should only be on the Dark Fluff channel. Let's dive in, guys. So this happened a long time ago, back when I used to work at a supermarket. This happened at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. The following went down. This man approaches my register with a cart full of items, and I say to him, "Good morning, would you like a bag?" And this is when the customer sarcastically says to me, "No, I'm gonna carry all of these by themselves, every single one of them." Now, it must have been the underpay, the rude tone, or the fact that I was just so tired of customers being nasty, but I decided to go along with it. So me, beaming, said to him, "Okay, sir, no problem." I then proceed to scan all of his items and charge him. The man paid, and he stood there blankly, staring at his groceries for a moment before looking at me. The guy then asked, "So, where are my bags?" That's when I say to him, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I thought you said you were gonna carry all of these items." The guy then gets angry and says, "Well, obviously I can't carry all of this without a bag. It's over 30 items. I then say, "Oh, okay, well in that case." I then proceed to go through the usual single-use or reusable bag spiel. And then, wouldn't you know it, we were out of the bags he wanted, so I had to call a manager to bring some more bags to me, which always took ages in the supermarket. The customer then had to dig out his wallet and card to pay a tiny amount for some bags, and then I hand them to him with a smile and a receipt. And I watched while he bagged his own groceries, scowling the whole time. Normally, I would scan and bag, but as he didn't want bags to start with, I didn't offer and the guy didn't ask. All in all, a 5-minute transaction took a good 15 minutes and he never pulled that with me again. I have no idea what he thought would happen while he watched me scan everything and pile it up in a very obviously non-bagged heap, but hey, the guy said no bags. You know what, sometimes you have to give a snarky customer exactly what they ask for. And this person says, I would have said to him straight-faced, "That'll be very impressive, sir. Are you sure a bag wouldn't be easier?" Always run with the customer sarcasm unless you know them well. It's not worth risking a manager deciding that you were at fault, though it's not like you can stop that either. And guys, this person shares a short comment about a similar customer's orders backfiring. They say, "For some context, I used to work at this convenience store, and this franchise has been in trouble in the past for selling alcohol to underage people. So they instituted a policy of, I don't care how old you look, we need to see ID. So even people who are obviously old enough to buy beer need to show ID. Hell, they even have my birthday memorized at this point, and they still won't sell to me if I don't show ID. It's the law." That said, the day this happened, I was working with someone else. A guy comes in to buy beer and he didn't have ID, and my coworker tells him, "No ID, no beer." The guy continued to argue that he was old enough, and if she didn't believe him, to call the police, so she did. While they're waiting on the township police to show up, a state trooper pulls in to get gas, and the guy starts harassing the cop about my coworker not selling him beer due to no ID, when he clearly was old enough. The state trooper kept the dude busy long enough for the township police to show up. I was in the back stock room, and when I came out, all my coworker said to me was, I don't know what he said to the cop that came in, but the next thing I know, they walk him outside and he's handcuffed and being loaded into the back of a police car. It turns out the man had a warrant for his arrest. To begin, I work at a small regional airport that mostly caters to chartered flights. This means we have a lot of private jets coming in and out. We cater to the passengers, and when the passengers have everything they need, we make sure the pilots have their aircraft fueled up, have coffee, newspapers, and whatever else they need. Most pilots are very nice and they even tip, but one pilot was not so nice. In fact, he was especially mean, like the guy was a Karen. We have a term for him in the aviation industry, Sky King, so we'll call him Sky King from now on. As a bit of background, it was a Tuesday, and we're expecting it to be a slow day, so I was working alone. I was responsible for taking care of aircraft and the pilots, as well as ringing them up for their charges, running the front desk, and taking care of miscellaneous work around the airport. We also keep a cell phone on us, so when someone calls the office while we're out doing other things, they have a direct way of contacting us. We even have a sign that we put up on the front desk that says, "Our line crew is out working on the ramp or in one of the hangars. If you need assistance, please call this number." When this happened, I parked the airplane, ensure the aircraft is chalked and secure, then take care of the passengers by bringing their rental car next to the aircraft and loading their luggage. They were friendly and appreciative. Once that was settled, I peek into the airplane to talk to the pilots. I ask how their flight was and what they would be needing. The co-pilot said they're picking up more passengers in about 30 minutes, and knowing that it takes quite a while to fuel a large airplane, I ask if they needed fuel for a rather quick turnaround. That's when the Sky King comes storming out of the cockpit and he scoffs and says, "Did you really just ask if we need fuel?" Being caught off guard, I respond, yes, He then says to me, "Instead of bugging me, how about you piss off for 5 minutes and let me figure it out?" I respond, "I'm sorry, I was just trying to..." He then interrupts and says, "Piss off, I'll call you when I need you." Now, I specifically remember thinking, what the heck was up this guy's butt at the time? So I walk away from the aircraft a bit shaken up, but I was so upset as I've never had a captain scream at me before. I figured, okay then, if you want to call me when you need me, then you can call me when you need me. So I proceed to do everything else I had on my list for the day. I swept our maintenance hangar, did an oil change on our aircraft tug, bled the brakes on our jet porter, and detailed our company's private jet. That's when I looked at the clock and I realized that Sky King's passengers probably arrived about an hour and a half ago. So I returned to the terminal and Sky King is pissed. He screams at me and says, "Where the hell were you?" I respond, "I was doing maintenance. You said you'd call me when you needed me." He then says, "Well, how was I supposed to find you in this entire airfield, huh?" This is when I gesture to our sign on the front desk, and I said loudly enough for the passengers to hear, "If you needed me, we have our number right there. Have they been waiting on you this whole time?" Sky King turns absolutely red in the face, seeing his answer right in front of him. He says to me, "We need 500 gallons of Jet A, quick." And I put on my most smug grin and I say, 500 gallons coming right up. I bring the fuel truck around and I fuel them up. It takes a solid 10 minutes, and then start loading the passengers' baggage while Sky King and his co-pilot ready the airplane. I apologize profusely to the passengers, and to my delight, they take my side. They said, "I can't believe he didn't see the sign." The best part was when he had to come back in to pay for the fuel with his company card. Knowing he was hours behind schedule, I took my sweet time ringing him up. I even asked with a smug grin on my face, "Do you want a newspaper to read on the flight?" The guy left without another word, and that, my friends, was a very well played malicious compliance and well deserved. And we can agree that there was no need to be that a-hole-ish, right? In my opinion, very unprofessional for an airline captain. A simple, I don't know, "Give me a few minutes to check" would have sufficed. And this person comments, "As someone who's quite familiar with your role and industry, good for you, F that guy." I would only say that it sucks for the passengers, but it made me have a grin on my face when you said they took your side. So about 15 years ago, when I was in my last year of college, I was working at a pay-by-the-hour daycare. Although it was a typical college job for me, I still did my best, and I made sure to show up on time, work the station I was supposed to work, and do my best at whatever task I was supposed to do. Imagine my surprise when I get a call on my day off asking where I was and why I wasn't coming in. I explained to them, well, it's my day off, I don't work today. That's when I was informed that my name's on the schedule, and this would be treated as a no-call, no-show. That means a write-up. The rest of the night was spent worrying about not going to work and wondering how I messed up so badly. I came into work on my next shift, where a manager and the assistant manager proceed to give me the write-up. They condescendingly show me the schedule like they're gonna show me how to read it, when I notice that the person who normally works the shift that I missed had their name crossed out and my name put in their place. I point this out to them, and they explained that on the morning I missed my afternoon shift, the original person called out, and I was slated to replace her. And the thing is, they didn't call me to let me know, or I would have happily come in for extra cash. Naturally, I was a bit hesitant to sign a write-up because they changed my shift and they didn't tell me. At this information, my manager simply said, "It's your responsibility to know your work schedule, my dear." I respond, "Well, even if you change it the day of and you don't call me, how does that work?" I could see the wheels turning in her head, and she doubles down and said, "Yes, you're an adult. This is the real world, and you're expected to know when you're scheduled to work. You should have called to double check your schedule." So with that, cue malicious compliance time. There were 3 main shifts at this daycare: morning, afternoon, and evening. I called before every single shift of every single day. I even called on days I was supposed to work and on days I wasn't. After all, as a responsible adult, it's my responsibility to make sure my schedule doesn't change, right? I would call in and say something like, "Hi, this is OP. I'm just calling to double check if I'm on the schedule for next shift. My copy says I work at this time." It didn't take long, although it took longer than it should, for them to call me again into the office. They told me that they would call me from now on should the schedule change. Sometimes, I do wonder what happened to them until I remember that I don't give an F. Yeah, the nerve of that boss to make OP sign their write-up for something that was clearly not their fault. And apparently, this thing happens to a lot of people at their jobs. And the top comment on this post says, "That sort of thing happened to me with my first job. I was hired mid-schedule. The manager told me to check the schedule on Thursday to see when I would be working, as I wouldn't be added until the next week. When I checked, I wasn't on the schedule. The manager was on vacation until the following Monday. When I went in Monday afternoon to ask why I hadn't been put on the schedule, he greets me with, "You have a lot of nerve coming in here today." I respond, "Why?" He then screams at me and says, "You didn't show up for your shifts over the weekend. I should fire you right now." I then respond, "But I checked. I wasn't on the schedule." He then grabs the schedule off the counter and he points to a name on the sheet and he says, "Right here, you were scheduled for Friday and Saturday." That's when I say to the manager, "My name isn't Sharon." He then says, "Well, you should have come in anyways." Absolutely ridiculous, right? And I hope that OP quit right then and there, because nothing like when a boss mucks up and tries to blame the poor worker, right? And guys, since we're on the topic of bosses mucking up, listen to this next post where OP's boss messes up big time by demoting them. So this happened decades ago. I was the manager of a programming department. I initially had 5 programmers reporting to me, and I was able to spend half my time programming and half the time managing. I had always gotten exceeds or far exceeds expectations on my annual reviews. About 10 years later, my team had 25 people and I was spending less and less time programming. Fast forward a few years and I missed 2 months during the year for a surgery and a hospital stay. And during my annual review, my boss, who knew nothing about programming, told me that I wasn't doing a good job and the programming department was missing completion dates. I just said to him that's probably because I was in the hospital. He then wanted me to go back to just programming, and I was stripped of my manager position, and I was to only focus on programming, nothing else. I was pissed off, but I told him I can do that. I told my former staff what happened, and I told them to direct all questions to my boss, who knew zero about programming. He was so overwhelmed, and soon, senior management figured out that my boss was the problem, not me. They canned him immediately, and they replaced him with the VP of programming in the UK. I'm in the US. Now, she was great, since she started as a programmer and she was an excellent boss in general. Since I was just a programmer now, all of the managers were in the UK, and I told my former staff to direct all questions to their new bosses in the UK. Since there was a 6-hour time difference and we only overlapped 2 to 3 hours a day, that meant getting questions answered in a timely manner was quite difficult. In the meantime, my health wasn't the best, and my doctor told me that I should go to a 4-day, 32-hour work week so my health wouldn't continue to suffer. Since my employer was a strict 40-hour week company, I looked for another job and I got 8 job offers in about a month. I was ready to resign. Finally, after a few months, my new boss asked me to be a manager again because of the time difference between the US and UK, because I had the most experience as a programmer in the company. Instead, I gave her my resignation and I explained why. She asked me what it would take to get me to stay, and I told her I wanted a 10% raise, I wanted a 4-day, 32-hour work week, and some more vacation time. I gave her 24 hours to respond. She spoke to higher-ups, and finally, she came back the next day and she agreed. Guys, the post ends right there, but it's always nice when companies recognize how valuable their employees are. Like, I read a lot of malicious compliance stories about bad companies, and I gotta say, I'm really impressed that the company had people smart enough to realize a mistake had been made, and they worked to resolve it. As for OP's old boss, well, good riddance is what I say. This happens in a large store in a European country. When you purchase something from them and for any reason you want to return the item, their policy is they never give money back. They only give you a voucher, redeemable same day only. I went to the store today and I purchased quite a long list of items. I got home and my wife looks at them and says, "We don't need some of them." I go back to the store, barely 20 minutes pass. The returns manager just smiles at me as I tell her I just purchased these and I would like to return them. She tells me that since I stepped out of the store, she can't refund. She can only give me a voucher and I must buy something else. Now here's the thing, I'd already bought everything I needed. I tried to reason, but she was adamant, those are the rules. You stepped out of the store, you don't get a refund, we're done here. And that's when it clicked. I asked, so if someone wants to return an item without leaving the store, they can get the money back, yes? She responds, yes. You see where this is heading, malicious compliance kicking in. So I asked to return the items and get the store credit voucher. I then take the voucher, browse the store, and I find a product exactly the same amount. I buy it with the voucher. Right after the cashier, I head straight to the returns manager. I hand her that random product I had just bought, and I say, I would like to return this, I don't want it, and I never left the store. Right about now, she's looking at me with barely contained rage in her eyes, I kid you not. The awkward pause was getting longer, and then her manager comes along. He looks at us, and I smile and say, I never left the store, and I would like to get a refund for this, please. He nods. Silent and not looking at me, she proceeds to refund me the money in cash. Company policy, right? Okay, So I'm not sure if this truly qualifies as malicious compliance, but it's as close as I can find to describing it. This takes place in 1994, and I'm in 8th grade, 13 years old. I'm at a private religious school that had some very interesting rules, one of which is that we're not allowed to bring meat to school. Now, neither myself nor my family subscribed to the school's religion, but it happened to be the best private school in the area, so this is where I landed. Also, a little background. I have blood sugar issues that have since become more manageable, but due to the dietary restrictions and general rules of the school, I wasn't allowed to eat as often or as nutritiously as was necessary in order for me to maintain myself throughout the day. As such, I was often irritable, and before long, I was labeled as a troublemaker. That said, on a Thursday afternoon in the spring, I had a particularly bad blood sugar episode after gym class, and I had to be sent to the nurse. Now, nurse is in quotations because although she had basic medical training, it was only enough to placate the school's insurance, and per their religion, she did absolutely nothing but allow me to lie down and pray until I felt better. But the thing is, I straight up passed out. Like, for the rest of the school day, I was actually stirred back to consciousness by the sound of my mom screaming bloody murder at the principal, the nurse, and the receptionist about 30 feet away. However motivating the ruckus was, I couldn't pull myself off the cot. My mom had to carry me to the car and drive me to the emergency room for emergency rehydration. I didn't return to school on Friday, prompting my best friend Craig to call and check on me. I told him what happened, and he said he had a plan. So cue malicious compliance. The following Monday, we had gym in the morning. On this particular day, we were doing timed mile runs. Now, I've always been a gangly dude with an above average stride, so my average mile time was pretty good. I was one of the first to finish, with Craig coming close behind. We went to the grass to relax, and Craig pulls something out of his waistband of his shorts. It's his mom's credit card. He then tells me that his dad's cell phone is in his gym locker. Now, it was uncommon in 1994, but not unheard of, as his dad's line of work required one, and Craig's parents were stinking rich, so they had one. We asked for permission to go change for lunch, since the runs all were doing today. The gym teacher says yes, and we haul our butts to the locker room. We get to the locker room, and we begin to enact our plan. Craig calls Pizza Hut, and he orders a large meat lover's pizza to be delivered to us at the school. Now, this school has strict but ambiguously written rules about students conducting financial transactions on school grounds, so we used the credit card to pay for the pizza over the phone, so no money changed hands on the property. Fast forward 25 minutes, and Craig and I are sitting in the cafeteria with our friends. The two of us are not eating. Enter the Pizza Hut guy, who thankfully seemed intrigued by what happened. Now, imagine you're a pizza guy called to a school cafeteria with a single pizza. Every eye in the room was on this guy as he awkwardly said, "I have a large meat lovers for a Craig so-and-so." Craig and I look at each other and we leap up. We run to Pizza Hut guy and Craig says, "I'm Craig so-and-so. That's for me." He then shows the Pizza Hut guy the credit card used to place the order, and the Pizza Hut guy seems okay with this. At this very moment, the principal, who we'll call Principal C-Word, comes running out of his office. Craig and I lift the lid on the box to inspect the pizza before taking it from him. Principal C-Word gets hit in the face with a wave of hot meat fumes, and he absolutely loses his mind. Like the guy slaps the pizza box closed and sending it to the floor. Craig and I were then taken by the ear to the office, where we were told to wait for our parents. My mom arrived 15 minutes later, absolutely furious she had to leave work, and Craig's dad, who had been at home waiting for the phone to ring, arrived a couple of minutes later. This is the conversation that followed. It went something like this. Principal C-Word says, "Your boys violated the rules and they're subject to expulsion." Craig's dad then asked, "What exactly did they do?" Principal says they brought meat to school and they conducted a financial transaction on school grounds. My mom then says, "Didn't you say they had it delivered?" He then stammers and says, "Well, yes, but what does that have to do with?" My mom then says, "So they didn't bring it then." Principal said, "Well, they had it brought, it's the same thing." This is when Craig's dad chimes in and says, "Show me the student handbook." Lo and behold, it doesn't say anything about being brought meat at school, only bringing it ourselves, which is one down. Principal then says, that still doesn't excuse the financial transaction rule. My mom asked, "Well, how was the pizza paid for?" He then says, "I assume it was cash, since neither of these boys are old enough to have a credit card." This is when Craig's dad says, "See, that's where you're wrong. We gave Craig a credit card just in case of emergencies." Principal then goes on to say, "Name one instance in which ordering a pizza is an emergency." Craig's dad then tells him, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't his friend there hospitalized last week for blood sugar related exhaustion and dehydration?" At this point, the principal just stammers. Craig's dad then goes on to say, "I've wasted enough of my time here today, and I'm starting to think that I've wasted enough of my money here overall. If you want to expel my kid, fine. I'll pull all 4 of my other kids out. Now, you're losing 5 tuition checks a month over pizza and some kids who apparently know your rules better than you do." The principal ends up backpedaling hard, giving out apologies left and right, and we got off without any repercussions. To put the cherry on top of this whole thing, Craig's dad then points out the rule about finishing your entire lunch or getting into trouble. He then says to the principal, "Since you kept these boys in the office for their entire lunch period, you have to give them the opportunity to follow the rules like everyone else." In the end, Craig and I got to sit in the cafeteria by ourselves for an entire period, eating our now cold victory pizza. What a win that was, guys, and if I were OP, I'd be feeling like $1,000,000 after winning that one. And I bet that cold pizza was the best pizza they've ever eaten. Like, that's gotta be the highlight of OP's childhood right there, defeating a nasty principal. So my dad is simple, to say the least. I often work with him on projects around the house, and sometimes when we shop, I split with him, while my mom and sister go their separate way. Now, about my dad is he has this horrible habit of telling me to grab something. Let's just say he says, "Get me that bag," and he loosely gestures to a general area. And when I ask him what he wants me to grab, he gets upset and tells me not to smartmouth him. Then, when I inevitably grab every single bag in the area he pointed to, he'll go over and he'll grab a box. Now, it's not a huge difference, but it's enough to be a problem. Same with working on cars. He'll tell me to hand him a wrench, and after I've handed him every single wrench in the toolbox, he'll get mad at me and he'll grab a screwdriver. Or he'll just start saying something and he'll trail off without finishing. And whenever I try to clarify what he's saying, he'll get mad at me for backtalking. And yes, he still expected me to understand what he's saying. And no, it's not due to a medical issue. Also, if he wants me to grab something from a specific area, he'll gesture loosely and he'll say something like, "It's over there." He'll never clarify where he wants me to look for it. Lastly, he'll not say my name. So if there's more than one person, it gets confusing. He, of course, gets upset about me not understanding that either. I've tried to have a conversation with him about it, but he just says, "Use your own effing judgment." So fine, I'm tired of asking for clarification and him getting upset. So recently, when he asks me to grab him something, I'll get exactly what he asks me to get him, even if I know exactly what he's talking about. If he doesn't use my name, I just don't do it. And if he gestures vaguely at an area, I'll just walk over to it and I'll stand still. So that all said, it came to a head last night when he told me to grab him a towel rather than a blanket. I just asked him what type of towel he wanted. He He rolled his eyes and he said, "Okay there, smartass, just get me a regular towel." So I went to the kitchen and I get him a hand towel. He got really upset and he yells, "What the F am I supposed to use this towel for? I need a damn blanket." I just looked at him dead in his eyes and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just using my own effing judgment like you told me, father." He got really quiet and he called me a dense idiot, but I think that from now on, he's gonna put effort into what he says because this morning, instead of telling me to grab him a ladle for his cereal, he asked for a spoon. I'm not a hopeful person, but I think I won. Small success, guys. Small success. Also, I promise, he's got no medical issues that are causing him to have a speech impediment. We've had him tested and treated for a lot of things, and I can safely assure you it's nothing aside from him just not giving a crap about what comes out of his mouth. Even if we hadn't gotten him tested, I could tell because when I called him out, he instantly starts correcting himself. Even then, if he did have a medical issue, would it give him the right to take out his problems on me or my sister rather than simply fixing it himself? I don't think I deserve to be cussed out because he might have had a medical problem. I'm his child, not his punching bag. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/petty revenge episode, where psycho Karens are causing trouble on airplanes and they're getting taught lessons they won't forget. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.